Hey everybody, it's Angela, and I'm going to do a scrapbook layout today of these fish, and these are salmon that were spawning in our creek, and they come upstream in the fall, so the weather is dark and gloomy, and the picture of the fish are small, so they're not very good photos. But the fish themselves are beautiful, and these photos don't do them justice. So I looked online and I saw these. I love that fish up there on the top. I love the coloring of that and that one there. And then I kind of like the positioning of the one below. So I'm going to use these as inspiration and make my own version of this. And I'm going to draw it directly onto my paper and then I'm going to color it in with Prismacolor colored pencils. So I've never done this before, so it was all kind of a big experiment because I knew I wanted to use some spray ink after I drew all this. So I wasn't sure if the wax-based pencils would act as a resist to the spray ink. So yeah, so it was all an experiment. So this is kind of what I'm starting with, and if you don't want to see the drawing part, skip ahead to about 8 minutes and I'll be pretty much done. But I went ahead and left this in for those of you who are interested in seeing how I do it. Here I'm using just a wooden stylus, just a pointy stick, to make some indentations in the paper. I'm pressing the white paper and making a little divot where my highlights are. Like, you know, that little tiny highlight in your eye that you don't want to lose. If you make a little indentation in your paper, then your colored pencil will glide over the top of the indentation and not get pigment in it. And that way you don't accidentally lose your highlights. So you might not be able to see it here, but I put a little tiny dot in his eye to help save that highlight. I did some of the scales and teeth and made the indentations for those highlights. I wasn't sure if the spray ink would get in there later and get rid of my highlights, but I decided to go ahead and put them in just to see how it would work. And then what I'm doing is I'm just layering the colors. I'm using blacks and grays and greens and browns and whites here on his face, and just kind of layering colors over colors to get the shade that I want. And I'm making the color very solid. I will make sure to get all of it covered. I won't leave any of the paper showing up through. I won't let it be light or fuzzy. I want that paper to be packed with the pigment color so that it's really waxy, so it will resist the spray ink when I put it on top. Here you can see I'm using a little bit of a bluish gray for the underbelly. And then I'm coming in with some of the different colors of orange and red for his back. And I liked the upper fish of those photos because the nose was less hooked. That one there, I liked the shape of its face. The bottom picture, the nose was really hooked. It was really starting, the fish was looking like it had a beak, and I guess they do that as they get older. Their facial structure will change. So I liked this younger, fresher looking fish. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at for this. And I kind of start out usually with my lighter colors first, and I just kind of mask in, like where all my orange is going to be in a light color. And then you can see I go back and I darken it and darken it and darken it. And I do jump around quite a bit color-wise. I just kind of hold all the pencils I'm using in my left hand and I draw with my right. And then you can see with the water above the fish, it makes some mottled shading on their backs. And I'm hoping that the spray ink will act like water above it, so I am going to include that mottled shadowing. Now I'm trying to get it to look like the fish is curved. He's kind of swinging around, and there's another fish above him and that's casting, a pretty definite shadow along its back. So I'm kind of following that, trying to get it to look like he's somewhat curved. but that all kind of goes into shadow and it's hard to tell. So I will be adding those shadows later. Again, I'm adding more of that mottled shadowing to the top of the back. And then I want to do the smaller fish with all the same colors for continuity. And I don't know if that's a male. I don't know exactly, if the females are bigger than the males or what, but I probably could have drawn it a little bit bigger. But he comes out looking pretty good. And again, I'm just using the green and blacks, grays and blues. Adding more shadowing below, and then also adding some lines for the fins to try to, get them to look more fin-like. Tried to put some more detail on there. I didn't do a ton of detail because I did do this somewhat fast. It wasn't like a drawing I was going to spend a lot of time with, so it's maybe a little more rustic than I would normally draw something. Usually when I draw, I'm very realistic in style. So this is pretty loose for me. And there I'm going to add the mottled shadowing to the back. And I'm liking that. And because, I'm going to use the packaging technique to apply my spray inks, and so I wasn't exactly sure where that ink was going to fall, because it's always kind of a guess when you use the packaging technique as to how it's going to look. Because of that, I decided to draw in some of my background so that I knew I would have some of the shadows in the right spot, even if a darker ink didn't fall in that spot. So you can see here I'm going through, putting a little bit of cast shadow underneath the fish to kind of set it into the scene, using some browns and grays and the black. And then it gets real dark back there between the two fish, so I do, right there, I kind of darken it in a little bit. And I'm also planning on putting an embellishment cluster down in that corner, so I know that some of that's going to get covered up as well. So I grabbed a bunch of Glimmer Mist, some Lindy Stamp Gang, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Let's give this a try. And then I blot it off of the colored pencil, and it works great. So I was pleasantly surprised that I hadn't spent all that time drawing it for nothing. And I'm using browns and greens for my ink because this is a kind of a creek at, winter flood stage. It's not like a pretty blue creek, so I didn't want to use, a blue color. I wanted this to be a little more true to life. And then I'm putting some sprinkles as well. And I like this ink because it has some iridescence to it. There's some green that kind of has the look almost of fish scales, and it looks really pretty. So I went ahead and put another bunch of ink up there where I'm going to put my photos. And then I pretty much call the background done, and I put it aside overnight to dry. And I came back the next day and I decided to use this Recollections Habitat paper pad. It's an older Recollections paper collection. And I pulled out a bunch of my die cuts, and I show them here. A couple of the Spellbinders, a Sizzix, and this Altenew, just the stamps or dies. And I use this quick release paper that I just got, and it's, first of all, it's pretty. Look at how pretty that is, and it works. Your dies release so much easier when you use it, and you also have the tissue paper cuts here. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but yeah, I saved them to use for something else. And so I fussy cut some of the ferns out of the paper collection, And then I also have all of my die cuts over there on the right. And now I'm just going to fuss around with placement. I also decide to just use two of the photos, that one of the full back of the fish and that other one that has 3 fish in the photo. And I'm going to mount them first on some of this scrap paper that I have from the collection. I do a very thin mat of this red just to bring some red up to the top of the page. And then I'll do a little bit larger mat of green around them as well. And then I decide later, after I've gotten them all matted, that I want the photos to be just a little bit smaller since there was a lot of open space. I cut them down even smaller so that it really concentrates your eye on the fish, because otherwise it's kind of hard to see if you don't know what you're looking for. So it doesn't compromise the photo by cutting it down. It actually helps focus to what's important. But at first I think I'm going to use them here this full size. And I love that paper. It just matched in so well to the watercolor background. So there are my 2 photographs. I have those 2. I also have those 2 little bugs kind of right in front of the fish that I fussy cut out of the paper as well. And I just want something natural so that it looks like kind of a foreground ferns and then some ferns hanging down, and it just looks kind of woodsy and natural was what I was going for. And I really loved those maple leaves with the red paper, because it's just like it's in the fall and the leaves are turning, and so it was just really looked nice to have those reds and browns in there too. So I go ahead and I cut that fern down because I didn't want it to cover the small fish, and I cut that other fern down as well. And this one I glue directly to my background, and the other one I am going to lift up on some foam tape. So I probably should have cut some of this out because I do fuss quite a bit trying to get this placed, but I guess you'll see my whole process here. It takes me a little while to get the right colors and shapes, and so I look at some other product. I have these buttons I'm not sure about. I have these wood veneers, but they were more leaves. I have these cool things I thought I could use like enamel dots. They almost look like salmon eggs piled up there, but they were just too unnatural, so I wind up not using them. I find these little dragonflies, which I go ahead and use, even though they're not, the dragonflies really aren't out at that time of year. They at least looked right for the setting. So I go ahead and I start adhering down. I like that leaf poking out from that corner. And then here's where I decide with the other fern and with the photos the size they were just taking up too much space. So you can see there through the magic of video, my photos got smaller. I didn't reprint them, I just cropped them down to where the fish is the main focus. And that way, you know, I can see a little bit more of the watercolor peeking out around them. So this other fern I am going to put up on foam tape as well. So now I have the photos pretty much where I want them, position-wise. I think I'm going to get some thread. I thought, you know what, before I get too much further, if I want to put some tangled thread, I better go and do that now. And so what I do is I find this brown, I have kind of a burgundy, and then kind of a bluey gray, and I wind up with just the brown and using the brown and gray. Because I didn't want to get too many reds on here and have them clashing with one another. So I just put a little bit of tangled thread behind those. I really like how organic that is. I'm just going to use my Scotch quick dry adhesive to make sure that all stays down. And then I forgot that I was going to put that one underneath, so I quickly, before everything dries, slip that one under there too. And now I want this one up on foam tape at the top, but I do want some glued flat coming out from underneath it. So I clipped this one fern. I like that one. Find some other tendrils and things like that. So I'm liking that. Then I'm going down here to this one and putting this fern up on foam tape because I know I want that one raised as well. Since I got that one where I like it, I go ahead and tack it down. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue down this fern as well. So I'm liking how the colors and everything are distributed up there. So I go back down to this corner and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to glue some things flat underneath that raised fern and then put the fern on top. And again, just trying to get some of the colors and everything down there. So I wind up using that little tendril because it kind of goes out over the fish without covering up too much. And that's in kind of the brown color. And then I think I use a maple leaf in the red, if I'm not, yeah. I put the maple leaf just for a little touch of red peeking out. And then I have another leaf that I'm going to put on the bottom right hand side, which brings in a little more of that brown. And then I will adhere the fern on there. So that pretty much does both of my clusters as far as the foliage goes. And I also put some thread underneath this cluster as well. Just bring some thread down there. And then I start looking at some of my other embellishments of what else I'm going to put on there. And like I said, the buttons, enamel dots, and all of that just didn't seem to look quite right. So I went ahead and stayed with these two fussy cut bugs and then the dragonfly wood veneers. I'm not sure if those dragonflies are from Sawcrafters or if they're Prima ones. But I decide I want to make them a darker brown color, so I just use my Distress ink to color those. And that makes it's really easy to do that. So I just color all three of those so that they match in a little bit better to my layout. And there they are, done. Yeah, I tried to cut out some of this just so it wouldn't get too long. I hope you guys, have a cup of coffee or something like that, cup of tea, glass of wine, something to drink while you're watching all this. If you guys have stuck through to this point, thank you very much. You're hardcore. So there I glued down my dragonflies. And I put one on top of that fern there on the bottom and then two on each side of my photos. So now I'm looking for some alphas. And I decide on these wood grain kind of vinyl puffy letters. And they came in like a Christmas collection, I think with the Scraptastic Club in 2015. I don't know. And then I didn't use them. So I'm pulling them out now. And I was just going to put home, but then they're thin enough that I could fit welcome home without the title getting too big. So I try a couple places and I like it back down there where I had it. So I'm just going to use this little ruler to help me line it up straight. And they weren't sticking all that well. Here I'm just gluing down that maple leaf so that what I'm sticking them to is already glued down. But the letters themselves, they were sticky but not that sticky. So I do run them through my sewing machine. I've seen a lot of people do that and now I know why. And it looks good too. And the home, I'm just right justifying with the welcome. So I'm liking that. And there I was going to glue them and I thought, nah, I might as well just sew through them. So I'll take those away to my sewing machine and do my journaling here off camera just to save some time. But I have these little gold hearts in a baggie on my desk and I use one of them on here. At this rate, it's going to take me forever to get through that little baggie. But there is the finished layout. I added my journaling, sewed the welcome home down, and I did add a little maple leaf in the upper right hand corner on top of that fern just to break that fern up a little bit. So there's the 3 fish in that photo if you can see them, and there's the fish, the single fish in that bottom photo. You can see my stitching and my journaling. And then there's a close-up of the drawing with the ink and my cluster and the wood veneer. So I really love how it turned out. It was a big experiment, but yeah, it worked out. So I was very happy. There you can see how much shimmer there is to that spray mist. It's really pretty. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you stuck it out here till the end, thank you very much. And if you have any questions on any of this, just leave me a comment down below and I will try my best to answer them. So I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.